Hello everybody, of course it's Mica, and today I want to talk about the races of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen because I want to talk about Pantheon and there's a lot to cover, so we may as well start with the basics. So first things first, there's some construction going on across the street, so if you hear a little whatever, that's just that. It's kind of out of my control, nothing I can do about it, so just wanted to let you know if you hear that, that's where that's coming from. And also, I do understand that there's a fair amount of crossover from EverQuest, and since people always seem to talk about them in the same breath, but I never played EverQuest, so I cannot confirm. I was a Final Fantasy XI man back in the day, so something that might be shiny and new to me that I'm all like goo over, maybe a remnant from EverQuest that's old news to some of you. I don't know, so just let moments like that take you back to the day when you first discovered the same thing and bathe yourself in that nostalgia. As there are 9 races, I'm going to keep things brief, giving you just the basics of Lord of Wedge or Whistle, and I'm going to split this into 2 videos because 9 races is a lot for one sitting. However, I am going to link more information below, so if you're interested in finding out more, that's all linked below. You can also use that link to help, to get more involved in this game and to put a little bit of money toward it. Make sure you get it and get into alpha and you get into beta and alpha. Anyway. Once we have more information about the lore and the lore's really panned out, I will do longer race-specific videos for those lore whores such as myself. To start things off, we're going to look at the most basic and boring race they have. Humans. Everybody has humans. Some people just like to make avatars of themselves. They don't like to do anything like wild and out there for some reason. I don't know. So there's nothing really unique to cover. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 10 fingers, 10 toes, and a belly button? Yeah, it's a human. The main city of the humans is a little old place called Thronefast in the northeast part of the continent known as Kingsreach, and apparently at one time they were on the verge of extinction. According to the lore we have so far, they landed on Kingsreach during a quite horrible winter, and only with the help of the elves did they survive. Psst, elves, we've seen this happen before, and it doesn't bode well for you. After the snow melted, the humans banded together like humans always do under the leadership of good King Amensal to build their own city of Havensong. But just over 20 years later, during the Deicide War, they were almost wiped out and Havensong was destroyed because when gods get pissed off, that's what they do. They just raze cities to the ground. But of course, as humans, they persevered and the Crown Prince, now King Avendir, rallied his people and founded the coastal city of Thronefast. It's been over 450 years since those events took place, and Thronefast is now ruled by the Lady King Amenthil. Butchering names is my specialty. And although the city is so prosperous, there is a lot of, we'll just say, drama going on amongst the aristocracy. But I mean, come on, let's be honest. When isn't there drama going on in aristocracy? Next, we're going to move on to the best race in my opinion, the Elves. I am biased and I will completely admit it because I always play Elves unless they're twisted into some little cutesy kawaii monstrosity or whatever the hell this is. I mean, I'm sorry, but I've always considered these like they took like the fantasy elf and they mixed them with like the little aliens with the gray skin and the big black eyes and they came up with this. It just looks awful. I hate it. Anyway, I've played Elves ever since I was just a wee lad, and Elves, they've just always been my thing. In fact, the only thing better than Elves are dogs. But to be fair, to be completely fair, there is no living creature in fantasy or reality better than dogs, and I dare you to prove me wrong. You can't, because dogs are perfect. I will fight you. The Elves have a long history of making the most delicious cookies. No, wait, no, wrong Elves, rewind that. The Elves have a long history as their peoples just go way, way back, and of course, they are the masters of everything, from art to battle to trade to the arcane. Like I said, Elves are perfect. Not everything has been perfect for the Elves, however, as their homeland has been plagued by pestilence and civil war. Originally, the power of the Elves was split into 3 realms: the Guardian North, the Fertile West, and the Orchestral South. I don't know what to do for that, so just the Orchestral South. Until one time, the North just felt they were being treated unfairly and joined forces with the beasts of the Tor, and they marched on their sister realms, forever cutting themselves off from their brothers and sisters and becoming known as the Tormentiri, which, I mean, to be fair, is a lot nicer name than what my family knows me as. With the west being laid to ruin, the gods Elo and Dethir led the remaining elves to a lush valley with a tree known as Lumos, so large that it was mistaken for a mountain. I wonder if it had an oven for cookies inside. I don't want cookies. I'll be right back. Oh god, that's so yummy. Anyway, where was I? But yeah, the Tormentiri tracked them down and destroyed that place, to reducing even the great tree Lumos to a burned out husk. This caused the elves to flee and become nomads in their grief, painted themselves with the cinders of Lumos, and therefore became known as the Ashen. Now enter the god Dathir again, who dug through the remains of Lumos to find the Heartseed and gave it to the Ashen, who settled in the Rhone mountains of Terminus and planted the seed. They created a new government known as the Council of Nine Branches, who shared authority equally and openly to prevent another Tormentiri thing from happening. After hundreds of years, the Deicide War again brought ruin to the home of these most perfect creatures and even burned their new tree, which, by the way, was named the Lucent. But not all was lost, because much like the elves themselves, the tree was burned, but not dead. This did, however, cause a split amongst the elves, causing the Ember Elves to be born. Now, there's no physical difference between the Ashen and the Ember Elves at all. I mean, it wasn't like they became two different races completely. The Ember Elves just kind of have a whole different outlook. They're kind of like the cool hip elves. The Ashen Elves really want nothing to do with outsiders or the outside world. Their main concern is just themselves and their own people. Where the Ember, they're not really more trusting of outsiders, but they do go out and explore and engage with other races and cultures. They are a little bit more aggressive and they will fiercely defend their own, so don't piss them off. There's also a third type of elf known as the Lucent, which is kind of your in-between. I mean, they're not as xenophobic as the Ashen, but they're not as wild as the Ember. They kind of tend to live and let live sort of attitude, hence why they're not mentioned more. They're kind of like the Jan Brady of the bunch. And now it's time for the Dwarves and the Epic Beardom. The Dwarves are said to be the first race to inhabit Terminus and the only race who can definitively trace themselves to the moment of creation. It is said the god Causus, I'm probably, again, massacring names, but, you know, it is what it is. Causus held a stone from the heart of the Coldark Peak in one hand and the ice of Ryfel in the other, and with the approval of Luck and Hammer, pressed them together with perfect pressure and balance, thus creating the Dwarves. Unlike other gods, Causus stayed with the dwarves and taught them how to take care of themselves and spoke freely and openly with them. He even gave up his own immortality to rule amongst them, and this type of selflessness is a virtue of the dwarven race. They don't seek to rule, they only really want to increase their mastery of smithing, magic, and battle. Their bodies are strong and their minds are perceptive. But they are far from perfect, as a rival of Causus, Rozik the Rageful, kept the dwarves in check, always trying to twist them against Causus. Basically, he was the devil on one shoulder where Causus was the angel on the other, but it keeps the dwarves neutral and in balance, which was the end goal. The dwarves, who of course are known for their mastery of smithing, were taught by Causus to fuse ice and stone. It's not working. Come on. To create Coldark steel, a metal so strong it's said to be unbreakable and may also be cut in so thin that can be used as fabric. But now all I can think of is a little dwarven Tim Gunn with a big bushy beard walking amongst all the other little dwarves telling them to make it work. It's a fun picture in your head. Let us now move on to the Archai, which are a unique race to Pantheon. The Archai were created from another race made of pure energy called the Eowyn, maybe it's how you pronounce it, I'm not quite sure. But the Archai were created to be slaves to a being known as the Celestial Lord. The Archai are able, due to the method of their creation, to bond with the natural elements around them, and as children they are infused with water, fire, wind, or minerals in a ceremony known as the True Birth, and this is what gives them all those unique markings. Even though they were created to be slaves, they rose up against their oppressors and overthrew them long ago, giving birth to a nation of people with a strong culture that is known for endurance, poise, jubilation, and song. Taller and more beefy than humans or elves, they do not suffer from the lack of dexterity that comes with a large frame. Which is kind of surprising. When I first saw these guys, I was just like, oh, they're like the big beefy jocks, but apparently they're the big beefy drama geeks. Finally, the last race we're going to cover today is the Skar. So, the Skar, they are quite violent and they are quite a new race on Terminus. They keep no written records, so very little is known about them to the other races. In fact, the only stuff that's really known comes from a Coggan slave that was stolen from the Skar by the Elves. According to the slave, before being known as the Skar, these creatures called themselves the Azagan, and they were a nomad group of mercenaries that hired themselves out to the dominant military force of a region, which at that time was known as the Soak. Eventually, the Azagan became less mercenary, more slave, whose effectiveness allowed the Fusok to thrive. But this really didn't matter to them because all they wanted was a constant flow of battle, and whether they were mercenary or slave, that's what they got. That is until a priestess of the Nine God, the god most worshipped by the Azagan, tried to release them from slavery and make them into a warrior nation under her control. A nation that would rival any that would stand before it, and she unleashed that fury first against the Fusok, leaving the once great kingdom completely destroyed and unrecognizable. Yet they continued on, leaving complete ruin every path they strode. Then the Nine God himself stepped in. He made all the Azagan sterile and caused all their bones to push through their skin so they would be forever marked to any who would encounter them. He also renamed them the Skar, and apparently they didn't really like the name Skar, but they used the name Skar for whatever reason, even though it was kind of like spat from their mouths. But yeah, anyway, from then on they were known as the Skar. The priestess, however, did not escape retribution. She was chained to the Azagan for 1,200 years, which is 1 century for each destroyed nation, and made her the lone reproducer of the Skar. Which honestly, if you think about it, is like the most horrible thing, because think about giving birth to a baby with all those bones sticking out of their head. Ouch. For that entire 1,200 years, she was full belly pregnant with kids, yet she only produced 7, who themselves were then able to have children, which caused some people to believe that the curse was over. Yet the disfigurement and everything still remained. But from these 7 children, the population boomed, and they settled in an area known as the Skargal, which is basically a big old blight to the land, and in the middle of it is this thing called the Dead Shear, which is a large fragmented Shoth, and it towers over all these now poor, distraught wilds. And if it were not for the infighting and straight up cannibalism of the Skar, they could really be a force to be dealt with in Terminus, but there's really not much of a chance of that happening anytime soon. But that's all I have for you this week when it comes to the races of Terminus, and next week I'll be covering the rest of the races, and I will also be doing a lot more videos on Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, because I am super excited about this game, and I really hope you are too, and I just want to talk about it, so I'm gonna. But anyway, my social media is linked below, as well as links to all the races I talked about today, and a link to a place where you can go to help support Pantheon yourself. So, that being said, as per the usual, it has been a hoot, and until next time, have fun.